All right, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Hello, hello. I love the conversations y'all are having. I am ear hustling in real time. So thank you for allowing me to do that in this room. So a quick funny note, I'm holding this up here for the recording. It's not really going to help us right now. I feel a bit awkward using it because there's no reverb coming out of the mic. But we love that for everyone that will be able to utilize this recording thereafter, okay? So if you said, oh, it's transcribed, period. We love science, right? We love technology, engineering, and mathematics. Okay, so all of y'all have already been in space with each other in different configurations for a little bit of time already. I mentioned that my name is Sharanti Gunatilaka. I use she and they pronouns. I'm a STEM justice facilitator here as a part of the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center, the Ideal Center, the Science Museum at large, all of the things. Before we get into that though, and I'm going to ask you all to also in the near future, talk to the folks next to you because we're sharing physical close space to each other. So that might just be a good practice. We'll talk about some group norms. But before that, I want to make sure that we spend some time introducing the facilitators that y'all signed up to be here and learning and cooking and sharing space with. And those two are right here. And I'm going to just start one practice that I like to do. I have a name that is not from this land. And I try to say it the way my mom says it when she's mad at me, okay? There's a very particular tonnage that she uses that sounds very different than my Midwest colonized tongue. And I try to keep to that. So I say that to say, I am going to ask our facilitators to also be able to say their names from their own voices so that you can hear it from how they pronounce their names, okay? And we'll do that in a second. So we'll start with our elders. And would you be able to just share your name for us?
Su nombre. María Oliva Ávila Vera.
Thank you. So this elder is a Yucatec Maya elder. She is a steward of the traditions of her ancestors, using her life experience and native language, Yucatec Mayan. Mother of 11 children, she shares her time between Petaluma, California, and how do you pronounce it? Mérida, Yucatan? Okay. So we have another amazing facilitator here with us today.
Isabel Hawkins.
Thank you. Isabel is an astronomer and senior scientist at the Exploratorium and a Fulbright global scholar in 2018 through 2022. She is a bilingual and bicultural science educator with a PhD in astrophysics from UCLA. Her passion is to facilitate authentic participation of underserved communities, particularly Latinx in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, in ways that allow for bringing the entirety of cultural identity to bear in the learning of science. So let's just take a pause. And to me, I keep on saying this just to contextualize who I am in this space. These are two of my elders, and I'm not going to have everybody share who is or is not an elder to each other, because that means we might have to talk some numbers, and some folks aren't comfortable with that, and that is very okay. But before we get into it, just even being able to share space with the folks that I was in circle with, it's so beautiful to hear what has brought everyone to this space. And if everyone could just take a moment just to pause, to think of the reasons, the people, whether they're here physically in the form on this plane, whether they have transcended, whether they have not been able to share this physical space with us in the Science Museum of Minnesota, if they're back home, wherever home is, and even future generations that have yet to visit us. We can just take a pause and bring that energy into this space. And so now as we're remembering that Not every ancestor is a healthy ancestor, and not every peer is someone that we are in collective struggle towards shared liberation. We're also here, hopefully, very intentionally about learning and growing and sharing with each other, right? We have some lofty goals for how this space will vibe out. And I'm going to take that pause again for myself and for each other to just turn to someone next to you, if you're able to, and introduce yourself with how you would like to be addressed. Sometimes that's your first name. If you have pronouns that you would like to share, whether those are gendered pronouns or expansive pronouns around your identity, feel free. And instead of doing a longer form, what brought you here, something maybe that's on your heart. Whether that means that your heart is telling you that the food hasn't digested yet. I don't know. If your heart is telling you that maybe you might need to get some fresh air instead of museum air. Okay, options. And if your heart is telling you that you're ready to get into it, that's also okay. So if we're gonna just take a couple moments here to turn to at least 2 people near you. So 1, 2, 1, 2. And then do that quick intro. We're talking about names, if you have pronouns or gender expansive identities you want to share so that people can address you in the ways that you like to be addressed. And if there's something on your heart, you can ruminate on it, you can write it down, or you can share it if I haven't already called you back to space collectively. Does that sound okay? All righty, I'm gonna let y'all do that. All right, everyone, we are coming back together with our completed thoughts. Our energy is still ruminating. Technically, in thermodynamics, energy is chaotic, but we are not doing chaotic things. We're doing communal things. It's so great to see everyone. I'm saying random science things as I'm talking. It's weird that the microphone isn't miking, but it is cool that we have expanded audio opportunities for folks as well, right? So weirdness, expansiveness, it's all part of accepting and expecting non-closure. So one of the things I'm going to just share with you all before I hand the mic over to our lovely facilitators, our lovely main facilitators, let me not X myself out of that, is that we use these 4 agreements around courageous conversations. Has anyone heard of anything like this? Group norms, courageous conversations. Okay, I love it. So ideally, I would have already put this on the board and then y'all would have taken little sticky notes and added more agreements to our shared values. As we see that is not happening right now. But what is going to happen is I'm just going to read off some group norms that y'all have probably heard before. And it would be super helpful if we can keep these in our minds. And then over one of the breaks, I'll make sure that we can have them as a visual aid so we can visually go back to them or be able to remind folks who are near us about our shared group norms. Does that sound okay? Alrighty. Okay, so these are from, not Shiranti, but the 4 agreements of courageous conversations. Number 1, stay engaged. So for me, that means stay engaged in ways that feel engaging for you. If you're doodling, taking notes, you don't have to necessarily be staring at the person that's talking into a mic, right? But, to each their own. 2, experience discomfort. Some of these conversations are very uncomfortable. Leaning into that is really dope. I love to use the example of folks who are into physical fitness in various ways, whatever, right? In order to build new muscle, you actually have to tear the existing muscle, right? So that's actually very uncomfortable. And if you want that new muscle, kind of got to go through that metabolic process, right? So this is something that we're hoping that if it's uncomfortable, that's really good. What does that mean to lean into it? If it's uncomfortableness in your body, in a very okay, actually this is feeling more chaotic, than just like uncomfortable, that's a good mental check-in moment to say, maybe I need to move around the space. Maybe I might need to take a restroom break. Maybe I might need to pop my head outside. Luckily, we're in a space where you can with badge access, don't just leave, please, because then you'll be locked out. But with badge access, you can quickly go out these doors straight this way and just get some of that Mississippi River, flowing off downtown air. I do that often when I need to just get out of the physical space, okay? So that's an option that I'm gonna offer to y'all as well. Number 3, speak your truth. Emphasis on your truth, right? I'm gonna leave that one there. And the 4th one is one that I started with. Expect and accept non-closure. We are dealing with a Gregorian time frame right now. And we have a lot of lofty goals, but most of this, we're really just flowing and vibing out with y'all, right? And we want to be able to get to all of the amazing parts of the day, okay? So we are going to expect and accept non-closure because we don't actually have control of time in the ways that we like to think that we do, right? Alrighty, y'all. So those are the 4. Let's see if I remember them. Ooh, not in order. Expect and accept non-closure, speak your truth, experience discomfort, and stay engaged. Do those sound like okay group agreements that we can all subscribe to? All right. Hey, that was a great affirmation. Thank you, group. All right, I'm going to pass this over, and I am going to be somewhere in the back drinking water. And if y'all need any of those things that I mentioned, feel free to just tap me, and then we can figure that out together. Cool.
Thank you so much, Ranthi. What a pleasure. So now Doña Maria will facilitate an asking of permission of the ancestors of this beautiful place to allow us to share the knowledge with you. And she loves to invoke the 4 cardinal directions in her language, and we will invite you to connect with the cardinal directions with us. And so if you would please stand up and face east.
Yeah. Hey, Maya. Wishing with lakilesh. Konesta kunip ola. Titu kanti silekana. Ukats atonu. Uno ola le. Utiak mint kele meyak wikminta. Tiyak ka otba titulak lontong ikiyanilongye. Ya se sakut yabanip ola tile yung ik. Lakim.
Now if you could turn left, please. That was east. We're going
Shamam.
to north.
Yabachnip ola tile yung ik. Shamam. Yabachnip ola ti yung kim. Chikim. Yabachnip ola ti yung kim. Nohol. Yabachnip ola sam. Titulak lesh leyanesh. Ikna beora. Kanawilesh bisumenda le pakachbiwaho.
So she thanks everybody for your participation. We went through east, and we went to north, we went to west, and we went to south. And she is very excited to be able to share with you how we make the tortilla, the corn tortilla. So we are going to do this in a very participatory way. And I'm going to ask Doña Maria to just walk through what we have here on the table for you to enjoy, which is actually her relationship with corn. We're going to begin with her story, her space, and then my role as a non-Indigenous person who is an ally to Doña Maria and a collaborator and someone from Argentina who has grown up with corn as well in our own community. I will go through a presentation about the story of corn. that I have learned both from Doña Maria and other colleagues, including many indigenous groups in the Americas, as well as the Academy. And it is knowledge that I think it's important in the context of history. I was so inspired by yesterday's keynote speaker and the importance of truth in history as part of what we teach in science museums, which sometimes we don't do. We don't even think about that. And so I think that's very important. Les comento, Doña María, que yo le voy a pedir a usted que comience mostrándole lo que tenemos aquí en la mesa y cuál es su historia con el maíz. Y usted empiece como usted quiera.
En español.
En español, sí. And I will translate.
Pues estamos aquí para hacerles una presentación de todo lo que se utiliza en nuestra cultura maya.
We're here to share with you and make a presentation of everything we utilize in our Maya culture.
Porque en la época de muchos años no había maquinarias, no había nada, puro siembra a mano.
It says in the old days we didn't have machines. It was just planting the corn with a planting stick by hand.
Pura cosecha de los milperos, como vemos esa foto que está allá.
It says if you see the campesinos or the farmers, we call them milperos. Milpa is the Nahuatl word for cornfield.
Cargaban esto, está hecho de puro bejuco.
It says this basket is made of just reeds that we find in our environment.
Y su mecapal. Sí, esto se llama mecapal para...
And the ribbon on the forehead is called mecapal, is to carry the load.
Cosechaban el elote sin cáscara. La cáscara se queda en la vaina de la mata.
It says you harvest the corn, but you don't take the husk with it. You leave the husk in the stalk.
Lo cosechan de esta manera y lo tiran en su canasta.
So you harvest it and you throw it above your head to the basket.
Y así se va llenando la canasta y lo van echando para que después lo vayan en costales, que se dice, y lo van aporreando para que se caiga todo el maíz y luego le quitan el cuerpo del maíz, que digamos le decimos en maya bacal. Le quitan todo eso y se queda solo el maíz.
And then they would put it on burlap bags, and then you would beat it so that it would release the dried seeds. And this is what you get. You can just pass it around. And then the inside of the corn cob, we call it the body, or in Mayan, it's called bacal, which literally means bone.
Aquí tenemos el elote amarillo.
It's a yellow corn. These are all native corns from Oaxaca, Yucatan, upstate New York, this one.
Aquí tenemos el elote blanco.
It's the white elote, and many different kinds of corn from Peru.
Aquí tenemos el elote rojo.
This is the red one.
Que vienen de diferentes lugares.
Comes from different parts of different places.
Ya, y aquí tenemos esta clase de elote, creo que viene de Oaxaca, de Perú.
So this one, she thought it was from Oaxaca, but it's actually from Peru.
Y este otro, que también es diferente, que se le llama el xnucnal en maya. Es el elote grande.
This is a different one. It's called xnucnal in Mayan, which means the big corn.
Ajá. Este es el elote con su cáscara. Se le hace así para que aparezca el elote.
So that's how you shuck it.
Esto en maya se llama jolooch.
Jolooch is the name
Es la cáscara del elote.
of the leaves, the dried leaves in Mayan.
Cuando está verde, se hace como el elote sancochado.
When it's green and very, not dry on the stalk, we
Y es
make the
un-
boiled
Y es
corn.
una comida muy tradicional de los mayas.
And it's a very traditional Maya food or meal.
Y se come elote con atole nuevo.
It says you eat
Riquísimo.
the fresh corn with new atole. It says delicious.
Ya. Y esto es otra clase de elote.
That's another kind.
Cada lugar tiene su tradición de elote.
Each place has a different kind of corn and a different tradition of corn.
También este viene de otro lugar que es el maíz amarillo.
It's a different place, different color.
Antiguamente esto lo usaban nada más para los animales,
It says in the old days the yellow corn would be used to feed the animals.
pero cuando vino la sequía, el tiempo de la langosta, que a lo mejor han escuchado, cuando vino la epidemia de la langosta, ya todo este maíz se lo comió la langosta desde las matas. Y hubo un hambre en Yucatán muy triste.
It says there was a time that she remembers from when she was young that the locust plague came and ate
Yeah.
all of the corn, even the stalk. There was nothing to eat. And it was a very hungry and a very sad time.
Y yo no sé de qué lugar de por acá mandaban maíz que se le llama el tuspa. Es un maíz grandote.
It says, and I don't know where they brought us corn. It came in the railroad. She told me the story, so I know the story. It came in the railroad. She doesn't know where the corn came from. It was a long seed, long thin seed. They called it tuspa. She didn't know where it came from. Maybe from up here.
Y llegó a Yucatán para alimento, pero era un maíz que la gente no está acostumbrada y en esa época mucha gente murió de mala digestión porque les hacía daño, porque era un maíz muy grande y tenía la cáscara muy gruesa.
It says the corn had a very thick cáscara.
Sí.
Ayúdame, chicas, cáscara. Shell or covering, pericarpium in science.
La cáscara.
Hard pericarpium. And then it was just not good for digestion.
Yeah.
People died. They weren't used to that type of corn.
Es más o menos así,
It was kind of like that,
ajá, pero eran
but it
grandes.
was bigger.
Y esto es la cal
And this is quicklime or cal.
que se usa para sancochar el maíz para que suelte la cáscara.
So you use this to boil the corn, the dry corn seeds, so that it will release the shell. So this is called quicklime, which is calcium hydroxide. It is burnt limestone. They live in a limestone plateau in the
Yeah.
Yucatan. You take the rocks, you make a big oven of it, a big cube, you put a bunch of wood in there, you burn it overnight. The next day, you go grab those rocks, they'll turn into powder in your hand, and that's what this is.
Horno de piedras
So the
Y
stone
leña.
ovens and wood to
se
make
prende
this.
y la piedra se vuelve
The stone will turn into this.
caliza.
And that's an essential ingredient, as we will go when I go through the history, okay?
Aquí tenemos más elotes,
That's more.
una diferencia a esta.
Look at the difference between the two.
Y esto en maya se le llama maíz chacchop,
Oh, that is the name in Mayan is chacchop. Chac is,
colorado.
chac is red.
Es que digamos maíz rojo.
It's like red corn.
Ajá.
Y doña Mari, cuénteme cómo ustedes hacen con el bac para saber si hay mucha cal o no hay tanta cal en el agua. ¿Cómo hacen?
Pues se deslía la cal
Ujú.
y luego lo mueves para ver si está grueso, si está gruesa la cal.
¿Y qué color se pone?
Se pone amarillo.
Amarillo.
Sí.
Okay, so she showed me this in the cornfield. You take the inside of the cob, and as you prepare your solution to boil the corn, you have the dried seeds, you have the quicklime. To know whether you've put enough quicklime, you stir it with this. because this will turn yellow, which is a sign of pH. So you're measuring the alkalinity of the water through this. And I have here a way to do that experiment with you. We'll do it in a moment. But this is pure science embedded in her cultural practice. So to me, as a scientist, my opportunity and responsibility is to open my capacity to see the science in her cultural practice. It is not her responsibility to identify that science for me. The only responsibility for Doña Maria is to keep her community healthy. For me, is the opportunity and the responsibility to be a bridge to the future generations and to us who are trained as scientists to make visible the cultural roots of her science. So that is the relationship that we have, and that's what, when I find these things and I identify, and I go, oh my gosh, that's pH, and then I go and I come to my laboratory and make the experiment, and I verify that that's so, I get very happy. Whether or not she cares about the pH is immaterial. It's immaterial, ¿verdad? Okay. Doña Mari. She brought this from her home.
Del día de la calabaza.
Oh, she brought it from Petaluma. And it says this is the American corn from the day of the pumpkin, like Halloween she calls it, the day of the pumpkin.
Y en México se le llama maíz híbrido.
We call this hybrid corn in Mexico.
Este es el cabello del elote.
That's the hair.
¿Para qué?
The hair gives it strength. Y ahora el cum,
Ese es el nixtamal ahorita.
ni está mal.
Este se siembra en las milpas. Son unas guías, como la calabaza. Vienen con su florecita y luego deja este fruto. Esto se llama, en maya se le llama shtuch. Es como la sonaja de los bebés.
So it says this is a type of gourd or pumpkin that is planted together, the companion planting of the Three Sisters Garden. And it's called shtuch in Mayan, and it's perfect for your rattle for your babies.
No había sonaja, no había juguete para los niños.
This was our toy.
Ahorita vamos a pasar con todo lo que ya vimos del maíz y todo. Vamos a pasar en el nixtamal.
So this is nixtamal. You may have heard of that. It's actually
Esto se hace con cal.
this is the
Se hierve con todo y la cal para que suelte la cascarita del maíz.
It's not very smelly right now. Oh yes,
Suelte toda la cascarita del maíz
you can smell the quicklime.
y sale la...
So that is to release the pericarpium or the little shell, and you can make the dough.
Y este es nuestro cuculcán de Chichén Itzá.
So this is the feather serpent of Chichen Itza. I don't know if you've been to Yucatan.
La serpiente
So
de
this-
Chichén.
So this is the feather serpent from Chichen Itza, and it goes down the pyramid during the equinox. to
Empieza
wake-
arriba,
It goes from
viene
the top
bajando, 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 bajando.
down, lower, lower,
A
lower.
las 3 de la tarde,
3 in the
a
afternoon.
la punta de las pirámides.
The light gets to the head of the serpent that's carved at the bottom of the pyramid. So this is a way of announcing the equinox, getting the earth ready for planting.
Yeah.
A 2,000-year-old calendar. Yes.
¿A qué tiempo en el año es el equinox?
Acaba de pasar.
Acaba de pasar.
Sí, 21 de marzo.
21 of March.
Y esto es el calabazo de los campesinos, que se le llama en maya chu.
This is a chu, another type of squash that the farmers use.
Cuando los campesinos se van a la milpa, se llenan así hay más grandes, su agua. No había así como para llevar agua.
That's to take your water. But this is a little one, but they use a bigger one.
And
But you fill it with water and you carry it to the cornfield.
este es el maíz hecho pozole.
So this is like a pozole maíz. It's what happens after you the other thing that's going around. Uh-huh. So that's with the quicklime. So then after that, you wash it. You have to get rid of all that extra calcium hydroxide. But then it becomes this.
Con esto se pasan el día los campesinos, trabajando en la milpa.
So the farmers will eat
Como una masa, se
because it
muele.
makes a masa, and you mix it with water, and that gives you your food. So
Y
this is...
se deslíe con chile habanero.
Oh, with habanero chile.
¿Qué otra acá? ¿Qué otra acá?
El frijol
El frijol,
y la pepita.
el chile.
Al chile. Ahí está.
Este se le llama chile seco.
This is a dried chile.
Y en maya es tiquinic. Tiquinic.
Tiquinic in Mayan.
Ah, esto se tuesta, se muele
You roast it. You
y sale
grind it,
así una pasta negra.
and then you get a black paste.
No sé si alguno de acá ha oído decir el chirmole. Este creo que se lo sabe.
Yeah, there you go.
A veces sale muy picoso, se le
This
pone,
is very, very hot.
se le pone
spicy.
cebolla, pollo, tomate.
Chopped
Digo,
chicken, tomato,
una
onion.
comida muy rica,
It's very delicious.
yucateca. Y esto pues es el frijol del pobrecito, según antiguamente. Ahora está más caro el frijol. En México está 40 pesos el kilo de frijol en México.
And it says that now it's so expensive. It's 40 pesos for a kilo of frijol of beans. And it says this, like we used to call it the poor man's meal. And now it's so expensive.
Antiguamente para el campesino, para la gente humilde, solo era frijol y tortillas.
It says
No alcanza para la carne, no hay dinero.
we lived on beans and tortilla. That was our
Yeah.
staple, and we were healthy. But because we had no money for meat. So you had to go hunt. No, se cazaba el venado, me imagino.
Sí. Sí, los que están en el monte, pues era una reliquia mataban el venado, se hace pipián de venado con pepita, se muele la pepita con achiote y se hace un caldo de venado que, muy bueno.
So she says that if you live in the field, we would, of course, go and we would hunt our deer. It was a relic. And then we would do the pipián or the deer with a particular broth that would include achiote, which is this spice that turns things red, and also pepita, which is squash seed, ground squash seed. And it was a delicious stew that we would eat, but that was very seldom. Yes.
Y también la pepita servía mucho para los que hacían las primicias de las milpas. Se hacían unos panes así, tortillas de maíz, pero así gruesos. Y los hacen así, en capas. De 9 o 13 capas le van a poner. Le ponen pepita y se le llama guajicol.
So we would use the ground squash seed to almost like paint this big thick corn breads that we would make. We would make them in stacks, either 9 or 13, which of course are cosmological numbers of the Maya. 9 levels of the underworld, 13 levels of the upper world, to make offerings called huajicol. Huaj means tortilla, or
Col es milpa.
col is milpa, or
Huaj es
the
tortilla.
cornfield. So the offering of the corn for the cornfield.
Se cocina bajo la tierra.
And the stacks would be buried underground on hot stones.
Se le pone leña, piedras que se calienten,
Hot stones.
luego lo abren
Then you
y escoran las tortillas gruesas ya hechas
You put all those breads
y
in
se le
there.
pone la piedra
You
caliente
put the hot stones,
y se le pone una capa de guano, hojas de guano,
and then you put palm leaves on top,
y luego le extienden tierra encima.
and dirt.
Encima de la tierra se pone pedazos de leña
And then you put coals,
Prendida.
hot coals on top, and that will cook it.
En 2 horas o 1 hora,
1
lo
to 2
abren.
hours, you open and you have your cooked bread.
y los menes, como se dice.
Okay. And then our religious leaders, they called
Y se
Ahmed,
hace esta ceremonia.
they do a ceremony called sakha, which means the white water. You can pass it around. This is our elder who passed away. from
Con una
Quito.
mesita de palitos.
And you make a table of branches.
Y la ceremonia de estas personas son puro en maya,
And the ceremony
pura
is
palabra en maya.
Mayan.
Ofrecen la
100%.
comida
You
a los
offer the
4
food,
lugares
four-
con vientos
four
que ya
spaces
hicimos.
or the 4 winds, like we just did now.
Y se le llama guajicol.
And Wajikol,
Mayormente se hace en las
the name of the
milpas.
ceremony, you do it in the cornfield. The ceremony is done in the cornfield.
Y aquí tenemos
Ya cuando
de la antigüedad, no sé si alguien, yo creo que aquí hay alguien que ha visto esto.
I'm sure there's somebody here who has seen a grinding stone. Right?
El nixtamal no había molino, no
We
había
didn't have
nada.
mills or, you
Acá.
know, it's all,
Se pone el nixtamal y pone esa.
so you put
¿Pa
the washed nixtamalized corn, go in there, and then you grind it.
Ujú.
¿Cuántas veces tiene que hacer eso, doña
3.
María? 3 times you have to go through.
Primero lo quiebras el nixtamal,
First you break the seeds.
luego le das una segunda pasada
There's a second passing.
y la tercera pasada sale
Passing is
fina
very
la masa.
fine, very fine to make the dough.
Si es que si no sabes moler en la piedra, no vas a comer.
So if you don't know how to grind, how to use the grindstone, you're not going to eat.
Y esto servía para el comal, para cocer las tortillas.
And this is the comal, or the hearth stone that you would use to cook the tortillas. Y las 3 piedras.
Y se calentaba con pura leña.
And then you have
Eso nos faltó.
you have a wood in the middle,
Ajá.
like that would be the
Se
heating
prende.
source. And it rests on 3 stones
Para hacer los panuchos,
to make panuchos,
las empanadas.
And,
Y
yeah, and the 3 stones are actually the 3 stones of Orion, with
Y
the
este
hearth in
chile.
the middle, which is Orion's nebula. So as above, so below.
y este chile se quema
And you,
para el
burn-
relleno negro.
you have to burn that chili to get a black paste for your special meal called relleno negro.
Después de que se queme, se hace una pasta, lo revuelves en tu carne molida o embadurnas el pollo y lo pones a cocinar. Él ya lo conoce.
So you can mix it. I can tell that he knows about this because he's going like this. But
Ya
so-
comiste panuchos, salbutes,
Oh my God, so good, so good. But you can
tamales, ¿no?
mix it with your ground meat. You can, use it to dress your chicken before you roast it. It's actually quite nice.
Y ahorita van a ver cómo vamos a tortear las tortillas.
And
¿no?
now, in a minute, we're going to go over. We haven't until 12, Sharanti. Do we have until 12 right now? Okay. So I'm going to just lead you on the participatory activity now. I think that's the best thing that we can do at this moment. I want to thank you, Doña María. Muchas gracias, mi hermosa
Muchas
mujer.
gracias a todos.
Thank you.
Hola titulacles. Ahí lo voy a decir. Achnit hola titulacles. Achki makimol anilenta wiknalesh. Tu mentene un pele maya. Tenés sigen tu pechanka. Ok, no hochta katin kana español. Y katin ka ote doctora Isabela. Chema in katin kana inglés o ach difícil in kia.
I speak enough Mayan to understand and have a conversation with the community, but she's saying, thank you from her heart. Hachiki makinwalin in Caholtikech. She says, thank you from my heart. I hold you in my heart. And she says, I'm sorry that I could say it in Spanish, but I cannot say it in English. It's too difficult for me. But
Tengo 11 soldados.
it says, I have 11 warriors at home,
Son mis hijos.
my sons.
11 varones de hijos tengo.
It says 11 children. Can you imagine? and 10 sons. Yeah.
Y muy agradecida aquí a los 4 puntos cardenales
So thank
por
you
esta bendición
for this blessing.
que tengo para platicar un poco. No es mucho lo que les estoy contando, pero
This is the
Estoy
little bit
muy-
that I have to share with you, but
estoy muy contenta que ustedes quieren saber
I'm very happy that you're interested in knowing
cómo ha vivido la gente
how
humilde.
I have lived as a
Yeah.
humble person.
Y quiero decir también que le agradezco mucho al museo, que es primera vez que me trae la doctora Isabel, y le agradezco mucho a este lugar y todos los trabajadores, porque la señorita ayer nos enseñó de cómo se está conservando las clases de maíz en este lugar.
So she's thanking the museum and the opportunity that for us to come here, because she was so excited to see with Rebecca from the museum yesterday the collection and how you're caretaking of the corn and you're planting that corn. Because we have learned
Tiene
that
mucha antigüedad.
So
Tiene
they're very
mucha
old.
antigüedad.
some of them were 100 years old. Sí.
Solo le falta tener este tipo de costura, que esto se hace a mano.
She says that she didn't see a dress, that she saw other textiles of the Maya, but she
Como
didn't
este.
see one of these and says that's lacking.
Y algún día le vamos a traer uno para que tenga.
There's one of these days I'll give you one of my handmade ones. Maybe you'll add it to your collection. Gracias,
Y muchas
María.
gracias.
Gracias.
Voy a llevar un recuerdo.
Dame chance de Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Doña Maria. That was amazing. I love always to.
Encontraremos en medio
Yeah.
del
Oh,
grupo.
12:30? Oh, good. So now we're going to get to play and really understand the key ingredient, which is this one, cal. Okay, the science of this element is... No, sí, usted lo mostró. Sí, lo mostró. She was worried that she forgot. No, she showed it. This is the quicklime for the nixtamal. This is calcium hydroxide. As I mentioned, it's burnt limestone. If you don't live in a limestone plateau, like our Lacandon Maya relatives, they use these river shells. You can burn these and grind them. It's the same thing. It will give you an alkaline element that you need to cook your corn with. And if you live in the northern plains or in southwest New Mexico to make piqui bread or other types of food that are nixtamalized, you use ash and lye, right? So those are all different elements. I can see you're nodding because that's what your people would use. So it creates the same chemical reaction, which is to give it a calcium element, which does 3 things for the corn. 1, it releases the pericarpium so that you can actually make a dough. Otherwise, it won't stick. 2, it will kill 95% of the mycotoxins that come from the field, any fungi or anything else for health. 3, it releases vitamin B12 or niacin, which is an essential amino acid for health. When the Spaniards took corn from the Americas without permission and without the proper cooking protocols and took them to Europe and Africa, they took corn without understanding the importance of quicklime or nixtamalized corn. And therefore people started to die because you get a disease, which is a niacin deficient disease called pellagra. And that happened in the US until the 70s. And guess who suffered the most? There were marginalized people in the American Southeast because they were eating corn that was not nixtamalized. And then, to add insult to injury, the people that were credited with figuring out the mystery of pellagra were white scientists, without giving any credit to indigenous people who had been cooking corn in this way for the past 10,000 years in the Americas. And Doña Maria is our scientist who has been cooking corn for all these generations with oral tradition knowledge and scientific knowledge being passed on from one generation to the next. And I am the beneficent of eating corn, as my people from the Andes, the people that have welcomed us Europeans to South America, they also fed us healthy corn in the form of humitas and locro, which is part of what our community eats. But there was no recognition of that scientific understanding. It was erased. It continues to be erased. And so that is the connection between this workshop and social justice, racial justice, reparations of knowledge, recognition of traditional understandings. That is the importance of history. That is the importance of us understanding where our food comes from. And so you have in front of you, now we're going to get to play. And don't be afraid to get dirty. If you have anything that you don't want to get wet or a little bit, doughy, put it aside. You have 2 containers in front of you. One is a little bit brighter yellow, a little bit lighter yellow. That's corn. That's polenta. That's only corn that is dried and ground. It has no quicklime. Okay? This is what los italianos comemos, the Italiani. Polenta. That's my people. Okay? My people eat this stuff. And then the other is masa, which is nixtamalized. So this is actually corn seeds that have been cooked with calcium hydroxide. So I want you to take a little bit of one, and here's some bowls. You can pass these around. There's our other stack of bowls. Pass them around so you can make your little dough and work yourselves. You have water. You have some cups of water. You have your 2 types of dough powder. You have your spoons. Put it in your bowls. You can start one and then the other. You can maybe at some point mix them, whichever way you want to do it. Experiment. And tell me what you notice from the 2 different types of material. Use all your senses and tell me what you notice. So we'll give you about 5-10 minutes to play. So go to it. See, you can put a couple of teaspoons on your bowl. Add some water. Add a little bit of water at a time because otherwise you'll have a soup, right? And you can add more material if you need to. And try and make a dough with one and then try and make a dough with the other. Tell me what you notice in smell and texture. And see. So you have 2 types of material, polenta and masa. So you can start with one, try and make a dough with it. Notice things, and then do it with the other. Try and make a dough with it and notice things. That one's polenta. Yeah, so try and make a dough with one and the other. Okay, so looks like in here you have some masa. She's making a dough. Okay. Okay. Great. So try and tell me what you notice. If you notice any difference. If one is easier to make a dough than the other. Do they smell different? Because remember, polenta does not have calcium hydroxide. Polenta is just corn. Just corn. It doesn't have the calcium hydroxide. Or quicklime. Quicklime is the English name. Yeah. So sometimes you buy your masa in the store and you look at the ingredients and it says corn, trace of lime. It's not this lime. It's not this lime. It's quicklime. Is this. Is this. But, we Americans are so squeamish. If we tell people that you're going to eat corn with construction material, people are not going to eat it. Right? Because this is construction material. This is how you whitewash your walls. So that's why they put lime instead of quicklime. It's a switch and bait. All right. So you got some stuff going here. Good job. So how did it go? How is it? Okay, so you got some masa. You got some nice little dough thing. How about the polenta? How's it going with the polenta? It's coarse. It's drier. It's not. It doesn't stick, right? Yeah. So one is the real dough. The other one doesn't stick. So basically, because in there you still have the pericarpium in it. It's great. The whole seed ground. That's the difference.
That's what that texture is.
That's right. And then this one, you've removed that, so the inside, and also the niacin and the quicklime allows it to agglutinate. So that's the magic of that burnt stone or the lye that we use to wash clothes. We use a soap lye, right? It's the same thing that we use to cook your corn, depending on where you are.
What fascinates me is the idea of who had the idea to do that, knowing, or if they didn't know that was going to happen.
That's right. But they have found 6,000-year-old ceramic pots in Mesoamerica with residue of quicklime on the inside. And the thought is that since the original cooking method is through hot stones in water or in baskets, those stones, if they are limestone, they will release, they would have natural gone. But what it is relationship to place. It's knowledge that comes through relationship to place. If you pay attention, the stone itself is teaching you. I mean, it's...
So this isn't starvation food. This is original.
Absolutely original medicines.
Original medicine.
That are still with us.
Right? Because fried bread is starvation food.
Absolutely. It's distorted.
It's distorted.
Commodity food that is introduced, as a matter of fact, to keep killing you. It is intentional.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that the resiliency of people that have been able to adapt it and make it their own. On the other hand, going back to our original foods, is medicine. Indeed. Thank you. Questions, comments? What are you noticing?
Well, we tried the polenta and it was just very grainy.
It doesn't stick.
I mixed them together.
Perfect. I love mixing that too. That's another way in which you can honor. This is also a mother food. This is our corn, right? So mixing it together, it's actually the perfect solution to incorporate both. And we're going to cook those. So we're going to bring them over next door. We're going to cook them. Okay? Flattening. So we're going to cook what you're making. We're going to cook next door. So bring your little bowl with you and your little ball of whatever it is that you've made, and we're going to go next door to cook it.
Are you sure you want me to cook this?
Well, yeah, just you could, fix it with more masa. Give her some more masa.
Mix the polenta with the masa?
Yes, you can.
Okay, let's do that.
Is anybody noticing difference in smell? What do you smell in one and not the other? Corn, that's the quicklime. Is the quicklime? Yes. How are you noticing here? Oh, you mix it both of them, or just yeah?
Came over and mixed them together.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to do it. ¿Le falta o ya está?
Un poco seco.
A little bit more water. Aquí está. Tome, mamita.
Vamos a revolver eso.
Oh, she's gonna mix it too. Okay, so Shanti, and thanks everybody for participating. I'd like to hear just maybe a few of you share what you noticed when you did your little activity. Does anybody like to share? Please.
When I started with polenta, it was just not coming together, and I wasn't feeling it, and so then I added masa, because you said you can add masa. And then it started coming together.
Awesome. So one really stuck and the other had a hard time. Anyone else would like to share? A ver.
The smell of it was different. One had the smell of the cal,
The quicklime.
but the other one did not.
Definitely. How it also comes in your smell. Anyone else would like to share?
I was was wondering why adding water to the lime makes it all come together. Like, what is the science of that?
You're basically creating a solution. So you're dissolving, right, the calcium hydroxide in water, and you're creating a solution. And the more of the powder you put in, you're changing the pH. So basically, if people wanted to also come later on, I can show you the experiment with the pH and how the cup turns yellow. I can actually do that if somebody would be kind enough to hold this microphone in my mouth. Can I ask you, Alice? So here I have water, and I have these tiny measuring spoons. You know, talk about Western science. You know, what happened to a pinch, right? But what I've found is that it is so sensitive to pH that if I don't use the tiny, it really goes, it turns black immediately. So I'm going to put that in, and I'm going to just stir it around. We'll start with a little bit, and then I'm going to use the corn cob to see if it turns yellow. Okay, it's already turning yellow. But I'm going to put some more. Okay, let me measure the pH first. I have my little litmus strip. Look at that. Look, with that tiny bit of quicklime, look how dark it turned, right? This is a very basic, we are talking number 10, pH 10, right? And let me put some more. So basically the ladies will say, oh, my solution is not quicklimey enough because my corn cob is not yellow enough. And look how much more yellow is turning now. You can just pass it around and see how it's turned yellow. And then your pH strip, if you want to geek out, you can use the pH strip.
Does it matter which corn husk or corn? No, everything always turns yellow.
But when I saw the ladies doing that, and here's your measuring thing. When I saw that, thank you, Alice. When I saw the ladies doing that, I said, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. It's amazing. So I've become, through experience, very sensitive to noticing scientific understandings within tradition. And I've also noticed that if a tradition has lived for thousands of years, you betcha that it has science in it, because otherwise it wouldn't have kept the people alive. And that is the whole purpose of science, isn't it? Science, the heart of science, in my perspective, should be essentially to keep us healthy and alive. Unfortunately, because of other values of profit and greed and power, science has been distorted to the detriment of communities, especially vulnerable communities. And so rebalancing the power structure of science is something that science museums and other museums, we have an opportunity to do and a responsibility to do. And part of that responsibility is to make visible the traditional knowledge and to talk about truth in history.
I was asking if you can share the importance of the pH level.
If the solution is not alkaline enough, you will not remove the pericarpium, and that you will not remove the niacin. You have to have it be very alkaline. So the cob has to be very yellow. If it's not yellow enough, you can boil it for days and days, and you're not going to have nixtamal.
So if we wanted to replicate this, can it be like commercial corn cobs, like from our region, and do the corn cobs have to be dried first?
Yes, the corn cob has to be dried. Otherwise, you're not going to absorb. Your water is going to be so soaked in water that it's not going to measure it in the same way. Okay, so let me just share a couple of things. Siéntese, mamita. Sí, siéntese, yo les voy a explicar un poquito. Así no está parada. ¿O quiere lavarse las manos? Lávese. Ahí tiene. Sí, se polvorea mucho. Okay, so I call this presentation 100 Years of Science in a Corn Tortilla, and then when I talk about the domestication of corn, you will know why. Corn is everywhere, right? Your Taco Tuesday, your corn on the cob, your Fritos, your Coca-Cola, many of the things that we eat. But it is also the primary source of biofuels. It is also in many other ingredients that are less friendly to us, including paint, embalming oil, shoe polish, you name it. If you walk down the aisle in any supermarket, most of the things that you will have in there will have corn. Most of it in the form of high fructose corn syrup, which is very detrimental to health because it's so addictive. You crave it more because it's twice as sweet as regular sugar. Of course, it's not good to eat any kind of sugary thing, even honey, with too much of it. Of course, balance is everything, but in particular, high fructose corn syrup is detrimental to your health. So biofuels is the number one use of corn in the world. The United States cultivates 350 million metric tons of corn a year, most of them going to animal feed and biofuel. Only less than 10% goes to food. And all of that corn is Monsanto hybridized corn. Monoculture. Corn as an identity, as we have seen from Doña Maria's presentation, when you have the biodiversity of the seeds, that really is a recipe for health and for sustainability. Sustainability comes through biodiversity. And when you have monocultures of food, you're also fostering what Shiva Bandana has said, a monoculture of the mind. It really affects how we think. And so diversity is our way forward in all contexts in terms of survival on this beautiful planet. Corn comes in many different foods around the Americas. We have here Jackie from El Salvador. She knows her pupusas, por supuesto, ¿verdad? Número uno. El bollo caribeño, tamales in México, Costa Rica, humitas en los Andes. Okay, so different kinds of words for the same similar kinds of wrapped food or other kinds of corn food. So there are more than 700 named corn-based dishes and beverages in Mexico alone. Right? The better knowns are up here, your tacos, your pozole, your tamal, your tostada. But how about surrullitos? How about nicuatole, arepa, mote, sope, molote, chuchito, gordita, chipaguazo, pastel, montones de cosas. So those are, and I'm happy to share this presentation. So very happy. And here's our images of our friends and colleagues that are cooking corn every day for their families or in the market. And if you want a job, se necesita dos señoritas o señora. So that's your opportunity to go and help out. So the origin story of corn is the origin story of Mesoamerican people. Corn is life, and corn is actually the very flesh that is in our bodies, as we can see through many of the expressions of art that have corn cobs or a person as the cob itself. Corn everywhere. This is the deity of corn in Ekbalam in Yucatan. Even some of the more recent Mesoamerican codices, like from the Nahuatl, will also have, of course, corn. And I worked with Doña Maria for the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian in 2010. From 2010 to 2012, we developed a website called Living Maya Time, or Viviendo el Tiempo Maya. It's a bilingual website that tells the story of Maya astronomy and Maya culture. And this is the origin story that we put together in 3 minutes video, but I want you to share this. Okay, let's talk a bit about the domestication of corn. Corn was domesticated 9,000 years ago from a wild grass called teosinte, which is still around in Mesoamerica, to the corn that we know and love today, which is a plant that requires the intervention and relationship of people to be able to thrive. Corn cannot grow on its own. You have to cultivate, you have to take the seeds out, and you have to plant them. Teosinte, actually, the seeds just fall on the ground, and then it will reproduce itself. But it's very, very tough and very difficult for it to come out. It is thought that maybe children and women were the first cultivators of corn and domesticators, because they would be out there, gathering and looking at the medicinal plants and being in relationship with the plants, much more than the men who were out there hunting. That's a very simplistic explanation, but it's something that I've heard and it made sense to me that women and children would have had a very important role in the domestication of corn. Now, where did this happen? Maize in the Balsas River, they have found carbon-dated fossilized corn. There were cobs about this tall, about 2 inches in size, in Guerrero, Mexico, 8,700 years ago. Those are the oldest fossilized corn. The Ocinte on the left, as you can see, just one little sprig of seeds, very tough and hard to haul out. And this is the beautiful diversity of corn that has been with us through thousands of years and over generation of indigenous scientists who have domesticated corn. Also, the importance of companion planting is also part of sustainability. Corn is a lover of nitrogen from the earth. In connection with beans, beans work in concert with the bacteria, fixing nitrogen from the earth, from the air, and putting it back on the ground. So it's a self-fertilizing system when you have a companion planting, as we know from all indigenous groups in the Americas, including the people in North America, in the South, in Peru, in Argentina. Companion planting is the way of the practice, right? This is something that is done, and it has been done for many generations because it is helpful to the community and is helpful to the earth. And the squash are the broad leaves that cover the earth and protect the milpa or the cornfield from pests, because those prickly leaves prevent some of the pests from coming in, and also it preserves the moisture on the ground. So it's a beautiful symbiotic system. So in terms of ages, in Gila Nagits, in Yagul, the Yagul Caves, which are a World Heritage Site, they're going to have their anniversary here in August of this year in Oaxaca. 10,000 years ago, squash seeds, first domesticated seeds, those are the oldest fossils. And then the Balsas River, 8,700 years ago for corn. Tehuacan Valley in Puebla, Mexico, 2,300 years ago for beans. So, and then corn traveled. It traveled to the north and south through relational exchanges, through migration stories that are still kept in the voices and the stories of indigenous people. I work very closely with Shelly Valdez, Dr. Valdez, she's Laguna Pueblo. We work on a cultural exchange program for indigenous youth together as volunteers for the past 20 years. And we have noticed how much there is in common with Doña Maria and some of the elders from the Southwest who tell the same stories of corn, the same relationship. Because corn went north and south, but it went with the ceremonial and food protocols necessary to maintain health. So it is believed that corn went north and south, and there were other waves of domestication, both in the indigenous people of the north and the indigenous people of the south, to create the extensive varieties that we see today. 55 varieties of native corn in Peru, 64 land races in Mexico, most of them in Oaxaca, 200 of them in the Americas, with 20,000 derivatives around the world. And one of them, Monsanto, which dominates the entire #1 crop of the world today, which is corn. Companion planting, I already talked about that, the corn, beans, and squash. And also just note that when you have the indigenous words describing the system, which I'm sure your people have and all the indigenous people of the Americas have, you're talking about that ancestral understanding. When the knowledge lives in the native language, you know that knowledge is what comes from the ancestral root. So that also speaks to the great importance, of course, I'm preaching to the choir, but it's the importance of preserving the native languages for knowledge transmission and knowledge curation. So here I am with Doña Maria in a Three Sisters garden in Novato. You can see she's holding the beans there, and we have the squash. So as you can see, a Three Sisters garden is messy. right? You don't see those tiny little rows that you see when you go through Iowa and see all of that monoculture. It looks so perfect, right? And it's just not diverse enough and not healthy enough. So diversity is messy. And it's a wonderful mess, right? And so we kind of wanted you to stay messy today. So cooking corn for health, we have talked about the use of lye or ash in the northern tribes. We have, and also in Peru, as a matter of fact, and the use of quicklime or ground shells in Mesoamerica because you have a lot of limestone there. This is our expression of all the necessary steps that we have just Doña Maria described here in her own language. The hydrated lime, the water, the dried kernels, the alkaline solution, the washed nixtamal, all the way to making your tortilla. If you need a flow chart, if that just warms your chemical heart, that's it. And the three wonderful things that nixtamalization does, or putting the quicklime, is it removes the pericarpium, making it easy for you to make a dough. It removes 97 to 100% of all mycotoxins in the field and frees niacin, or vitamin B3, making it available for absorption by the human body, preventing the disease called pellagra. Corn greed. So from the Americas, having traveled north and south and gone through the various waves of improvement and domestication, it was taken without permission and without the proper protocols to the rest of the world. And we did the experiment in which when you do not put quicklime, when you cook corn, say to make polenta or other types of corn-based foods, and if you eat corn as a staple, if that's your main source of nutrition, you're going to die if you don't cook it in this way. Because you get pellagra, which gives dementia, diarrhea, eventually death. It sloughs off your skin. People ostracize you. This was happening up to the 1970s in the American Southeast, especially in vulnerable communities, in Northern Africa as well. You can very well guess who were the people eating that corn without the proper protocols. They were dying, didn't know why. They thought that the corn was poisoned. They thought that the corn was it brought an infection. And then it was an American scientist in the early 1900s that demonstrated that it wasn't, demonstrated to the Western world that it wasn't the corn itself, it was the lack of niacin in the diet, but no recognition of the indigenous knowledge was given. So here you see the many people around the world that eat corn.
I do have a question really quick.
Yes.
Is there a change in the nutrients from when it's polenta versus...
Yes. The masa has vitamin B3 or niacin, which is an essential amino acid for your health. Otherwise, you have niacin deficient disease, which is called pellagra. And if you don't eat food that gives you that vitamin, you eventually die. If you have a very complete diet, if you're in the urban setting in which you're eating a bunch of protein and other sources that give you the niacin, you can still eat polenta until you turn blue. That's okay. But if corn is your staple food, your main food, you better cook it this way. Otherwise, you're not gonna live. And here's our perfect field, right? How beautiful it looks. But it's all monoculture, and it has been genetically modified to include a bacterium, BT11, which turns this corn into a pesticide. Because these bacteria release toxic proteins into the corn to make the pests that normally eat the corn not like the corn. And yet we eat this corn. Okay, so when you're eating genetically modified corn, even though it is approved by the FDA, I am eating a pesticide. I'm sorry. I know that there are things such as intuition. There are things such as our yearning to protect our community that I don't care what the FDA is telling me because I know her knowledge. And this is not pseudoscience, and it is not a conspiracy theory, which I'm also against. We need to inform ourselves and be very critical about information. So I am critical of the information coming from the government, not because I believe it's a conspiracy theory. I'm certainly in agreement that their laboratory experiments yield tests that say the animals are not dying, this human that was willing to do the test is not dying, or whatever. And yet, why am I going to eat that when I can eat this? Right? And why would I put all my energy into supporting research for the Green Revolution, which gives corn to millions of people, when I can be more intentional in supporting the indigenous farmers who actually have kept their communities and the rest of the world through corn alive for generations. So it's just a shift in values. It is a shift in values. And the people's corn is what you saw here, is what Doña Maria has shared with us, is what many of you have lived through in your communities and continue to steward in your communities. And I wanted to say that we went to visit the farmers that, when we go now over there to make our tortillas, the farmers that gave us the masa, we went to visit them in Oaxaca, and they welcomed us in their home. And there they are. And they have, you can see all of that, vats and vats of beautiful native corn.
What's the website?
Macienda. Macienda.com. You can buy the native corn from Oaxaca in there. So thank you. That was what I wanted to share. And I think that what should we do now?
Well, first, thank you. Yes. Y'all, I've seen these slides before, LOL, and I feel like I learn something new every time that I revisit them, right? Every time that we have the stories paired with the tangible experiment that y'all just did, and being able to sit back and reflect on our experiences with corn as individuals, whether it's this land, whether it's a land across an ocean, right? And being able to think of like, okay, the cool thing that I see all of y'all's like head nods from the back and the like whispering on the side, the furious note taking, is that there's excitement around how to recreate the experience that you're having within your mind, body, soul, collectively in this space for your own communities, right? So what we're going to do is thank you all for experiencing that discomfort. I'm looking at all of, some folks still have their well, I'm not going to, some folks still have their work in ball shapes. Some people have flattened them out already. I'm not going to put too much language on it, right? Y'all are ahead of the game, and some people are doing a great job in just listening, flowing, maybe just making it more malleable, and maybe some more time for experimenting, right? So we do have we're going to be moving, not yet. We are going to be moving and taking your food with you to then be able to use, I forget what they're called, but the little stovetop joints.
We're going to move ahead to turn them on.
Yes, thank you. So while we're transitioning into a different space, there aren't going to be enough for each of y'all to do this at the exact same time. Oh no, we hate that. You know, feel free to put that on a comment card that we need more hot plates. That's what they're called, hot plates. So what we're going to do is, before the space gets ready, there's going to be a quick question that I would love for y'all to ponder about your own relationship with corn. So how you ponder it is really up to you, right? You can take some time and like write it down. You can take some time and just think about the last time you had anything corn related. You can maybe dip into your toxicology bag and see if you have anything on hand, whether it's a snack or a beverage or a cosmetic that might have some of the ingredients that we talked about today in those products, right? However you want to ruminate on your relationship to corn, please do that, because we're going to take, because y'all are closest to the door, we're going to be doing this transition of bringing your food with you to the second preparation step, which are in classroom 2. So my group 3 that was with me, that's classroom 2. The rest of y'all, there's a number on the door, and it's also like down this hallway and to the right. So we're going to start with this group, and you can get your things ready to be able to move and like exit this door. You're gonna hit a right, and then it's another right with classroom 2. The rest of us are going to, and no rush, obviously.